Good morning, sir. Could you please tell us your name? And I think you're going to have to slow down and spell your last one for us, but spell both your first and last name.
Sure. My name is Michael Hilgendorf, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, and then the last name's Hilgendorf.
I'm going to ask if you can grab the mic by the base and pull it towards you a little more.
Sure.
Sometimes lower voices just don't resonate the way that we need them to under the system. Thanks.
Sure.
Michael, how old a man are you?
53 years old.
And where do you live? Just what town and state?
I live in Madison here on the east side.
Did you know someone by the name of Bart and Krista Halderson?
Yes.
Who did you know first?
I knew Krista. We went to middle school with her. Me and my wife did.
So you and your wife went to middle school with Krista?
Yes.
And have you known her ever since?
Yes.
Have you been friends with Krista ever since middle school?
Yes.
Could you give us a little bit of history about when Krista met Bart, whenabouts that was, and how they met?
My wife is much more of a has much more of a memory on that.
Sure.
But Bart and Krista met. They were working at a store in the mall, and they met there, and that's how their relationship grew there. And
sure. Your families maintained a friendship with the Haldersons over the years?
yes, very close. Our kids are very close, the same age, within 2 weeks.
Would you mind telling me a little bit about your family? You're married. You have a wife?
Yep.
What's her name?
My wife is Jane Hilgendorf.
And you have some daughters?
Yep. I have twin girls, Hannah and Haley Hilgendorf. They're 25.
And preview a little bit today, but they're all going to be here today. They're all here right now, aren't they?
Correct.
Over the years, would your families get together a lot and see each other?
Yep. When we had the chance to get together, we always went out to a Mexican restaurant, Pedro's, that we would always hang out with, and that way we had enough room to everybody spread out and relax.
Are your kids, your daughters, approximately in the same age group as the Halderson boys?
Yes.
Okay. And would they be friends with each other?
Yes.
Okay. How well did you know Bart Halderson?
Very well, very well. I think the only thing that we were good is we don't spend enough time together. You're just busy, but we're close friends, and it was nice when they moved back to Windsor so that we were closer and we could spend more time together.
What kind of things would your families do together?
Well, since they moved onto that pond, we used to do a lot of fishing there. That was fun. But mostly we would just visit and get together or have dinner and as we got older.
The Haldersons have a cabin?
Yes.
Do you know whereabouts that was?
I only know about where it was from going over there. I think it's in Langlade County, but I had never personally been there until driving there.
You never went to the cabin with the Haldersons?
No.
Okay. When was the first time you realized that maybe something was up, that either Bart or Krista hadn't been heard from?
Well, the first thing I found that was odd was I think it was, I'm not sure the actual day, if it was Friday but like July 1st, work called me late in the day because I worked with Krista. And they wanted to know if she had called me and let me know that she wasn't going to come in the day, which I found was odd. It was already late in the day for me. I was within an hour or two of leaving. Sure. And I said, no, I hadn't heard anything, but I would try to call the boys and see if we could figure out, what was going on.
And we should pause because I think we should make sure everyone understands. You worked with Krista.
Yes, Krista worked. She had was going to get a job, and I says, well, we have openings at Zimbrick. I work for Zimbrick Volkswagen in Madison. And so she fit in well over at our used building, which is about 1 block across the street. And she fit in down there at the body shop very well.
What was her job?
I think she took care of their accounting and their paperwork and ran their customer counters for when the people would come in and pick up their cars.
Got it. So you got a call on that Friday that she had missed work?
Yeah, they called me late in the day to check. And that Friday, we reached out and believe Jane called Chandler and Mitchell, and then we, at that point in time, I got back to work, and we were told, obviously, that they had went to the cabin, and we were leaving on vacation for 2 weeks to go to our cabin in Sainer, Wisconsin. And so we took off, and assuming that everything was kosher, and we just left and went on vacation because that's where we were headed.
Did you leave that Friday?
Yes.
So if I told you that Friday was July 2nd, that sound about right to you?
Yeah, it's right in that area.
Okay. You're up at your cabin. How long were you planning on staying up there?
I think we were planning on staying until the 9th and then coming back.
Okay. At some point, did your concern or your family's concern grow over Bart and Krista and where they were?
Yes, it did. Well, we really hadn't heard a whole lot, and then we had received a call again as far as from Chandler that they still were not missing or not found. And at that point in time, I asked my wife just to get the address, and we would drive there to their cabin to see how they were doing or if they needed help.
Now, this was the next week after that Friday, going into that next week?
Yeah, so I would think that would have been a Wednesday of the next week, if I remember correctly. Okay. So we got up, drove over there, and that was the first time, we'd ever been to that cabin.
How did you get the address?
Chandler gave it to my wife, and then we added it into the GPS and drove over to the cabin.
Got it. So on Wednesday, you drive over. Was it close? Or you're right next door?
No, it was 88 miles away.
Okay, bit of a trek.
Yes.
And it was just you and your wife at that point?
Correct.
Tell me what you found when you got to the cabin.
Absolutely nothing. There was a log over the driveway, which looks like that's the way they had it. It was kind of goes up to like an old wagon wheel and crosses over. So I stepped over that. There was probably, I would say, 12 to 14 inches of grass, so the grass hadn't been cut, and you could see that nobody was there. I did walk around the cabin and look at all the doors, and everything was locked up tight. There was external padlocks on all the doors.
Okay. After walking around the cabin, did you conclude that they hadn't been there?
Correct. I got back in the car with my wife, and I said, they're not here. They haven't been here.
What did you do? What did you do at that point? What did you and your wife do with that information?
Well, at that point in time, then we called Chandler back to let him know that they were not there.
Can I ask you a question? Were you at the cabin, around the cabin, when you called?
Yes.
You had cell phone?
At their cabin.
And you had
Yes.
cell phone service?
Yes.
And did you overhear the conversation with Chandler? Or was it just your wife on the phone?
No, I overheard it. We have Bluetooth through the stereo of the car.
Through the car?
Yes.
Okay. And did you inform Chandler that his parents weren't there?
Yeah. We told him that the parents weren't there.
What did he say?
At that point in time, he said you didn't see anything. No shotgun shells, no blood, nothing. And I said, absolutely nobody has been here.
He asked if you saw shotgun shells or blood.
Shotgun shells, blood, anything. And I, at that point in time, the conversation ended up fairly quickly. And that's when me and Jane were back in the car, obviously, and we turned around to head back to our cabin. And I responded to Jane, I said, this is really giving me a sick stomach. I said, this does not seem right. Something's not right here. And that's where we left it.
Okay. What did you end up doing that day?
We ended up going back to our cabin. We slept for a couple hours, put everything in the car, and came directly home that same day. So, which was, I believe, like I said, a Wednesday.
Sure. After you got back home, did you yourself have any other contact with Chandler Halderson?
I did not. But on the way home, I know my girls had went over to the house.
Okay. All right, 1 second.
Sure.
No further questions?
Cross-examination?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just a few questions. You are aware that the Haldersons moved to Plymouth, Wisconsin when Chandler Halderson was around first grade, is that right?
My wife would remember more things like that. I don't know what age they moved there.
There was a chunk of time, maybe 10 years, when they didn't live in Dane County and lived in Plymouth, Wisconsin, correct?
Correct.
And during that time, is it safe to assume that the regular meetings at Pedro's, and of course, they weren't living in the house with the fishing, so those things weren't happening, correct?
Correct.
And so you were getting together with them less than you would when they lived close by?
I myself, yes. My wife was still getting together with her off and on. My wife would drive up.
When you went to the cabin in July of 2021, were you looking for any evidence or any information about what might or might not have happened up there?
I was looking for Krista and Bart, and I didn't find any evidence that anybody would be there, or was there for a matter.
When you were looking around, you found at least one shell casing somewhere on the property, correct?
No.
And you brought that up with Chandler when you talked to him on the phone, correct?
That I found a shell casing?
Yeah.
No, I said we didn't find anything there. I didn't say anything about shells.
Okay. Thank you.
Any redirect?
No.
May this witness be excused and released?
He may.
Thank you so much, sir. You have a good rest of your day.
And Judge, could we approach for, I promise it'll only be about 5 seconds.
Sure.
And you can head out, sir.
Okay.
Perhaps I can make a record after you tell me what it is, so.
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are a few witnesses who have, I've been advised, have spoken with the state's attorneys regarding concerns they have based upon their own personal circumstances or employment situations where they've requested that they be permitted to remain masked while testifying. I realize that being able to see someone's face is the most helpful, but in these times and with the necessity of people responding to subpoenas for which they have no choice but to respond, I think it's the least we can do to honor their concerns and their considerations. So I would ask you to not hold it against any witness if they were to not even be asked to unmask while they're testifying. I wanted to explain why I'm not having that conversation with this witness, and there may be some others throughout the trial. So I appreciate your understanding of that factor. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Could you please state your name, both first and last, for the record, and spell them?
My name is Haley Hilgendorf, Hailey, Hilgendorf.
How old are you, Haley?
25.
And what do you do for a living?
I am a nurse on an inpatient rehab unit.
Okay. Did you know two individuals by the name of Krista Halderson and Bart Halderson?
Yes.
How'd you know them?
Aunt and uncle.
Okay. And you're not related by blood, is that fair?
Correct.
So how did your family know them?
Mom and Krista were friends for 38 years, and so we kind of just grew up with their family. Best family friends, and seeing as Krista didn't have much family around, we kind of just became their family, and they became ours.
Okay. Was Bart Uncle Bart?
Uncle Bart.
And just tell me briefly, what sort of things would you guys do when you got together, or?
He would be on a work trip, and he'd come down to Milwaukee while we were in college, and he'd just ask us if we wanted to go out to dinner, if we were in town, or if he wanted us to swing by, hang out, if we needed help with our student loans, anything like that.
All right. How did you first learn that Bart and Krista were missing?
From my mom freaking out.
Okay, in a phone call?
Yes.
Based on that conversation, what, if anything, did you decide to do?
I decided to come home from Milwaukee and figure it out for myself.
Okay. And what did you do once you came home?
As soon as I got home, I talked to my mom for a little while and decided that I should head over to the Halderson residence.
And why'd you do that?
Because since they're like family, I'm sure that Krista would have wanted us to take care of her boys as my parents would have wanted us to take care of them.
Okay. And who was at the Halderson home?
Chaz and a bunch of other detectives and stuff.
Okay. And you say Chaz, you mean Chandler?
Correct.
Okay. Do you see Chandler in the courtroom today?
Yes.
At this moment, I'd ask anyone within the courtroom, but not in the jury box, to lower their mask for the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and replace your masks.
Could you identify him by where he's seated and maybe the color of his shirt?
He's to my right over here with a blue shirt.
Ask the record to reflect the witnesses identified the defendant.
It shall.
So do you remember what day this was that you went over to the Halderson home?
Pretty sure it was Wednesday.
Okay, so that would have been July 7th. Does that sound right?
Correct.
Okay. And what did you go over there with the intention of doing?
Making him dinner and making sure he was okay.
Okay. Did you go with anyone, go by yourself, or something else?
I went with my twin sister, Hannah.
Okay. Do you remember roughly what time you guys showed up?
5:36.
Okay, so dinner time.
Dinner time.
Okay. Explain to me, was this the first time you'd been at the house, or had you been there many times in the past?
I've been in there quite a few times in the past.
How did the house look that day?
A little different. I noticed the couches were covered. And I didn't notice too much else. There was a table that was turned on its side. And I can't remember much else, to be honest.
Okay. You said the couches were covered. Do you mean like with blankets? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Did Chandler say anything about that at any point to you?
No.
Okay. And where was the table on its side that you saw?
Have you been in there?
You can explain what room. We've shown pictures.
It's just in the kitchen where the tile was, like near the wall.
Okay. Did you take any pictures of anything in the home that day?
Yeah, I took a picture of the table with Chris's handwriting.
Why'd you do that?
I don't know, because I was trying to figure out if they actually left or not. Like, I was trying to make sure that, like, I don't know, I guess I was conflicted because I heard that they left unannounced, but then I heard that there was a possibility that my parents picked them up, and I'm like, because I actually wanted to know if I was trying to figure out who Pam was, because I've never heard of Pam, and that was the name on the bottom. It said, call Pam if you need anything. So I was like, Mom, who's Pam? But I didn't want to forget who the number and name was on there, so that's why I originally took it.
Okay. All right, so when you get to the house, do you have any interactions with Chandler?
Yes, he greets us at the door and gives us a side hug.
He gave you a side hug? Is that how he normally greeted you?
No. We're
Explain
hugging
that.
family. We all hug each other, full arms, straight on.
Other than the side hug, how would you describe Chandler's demeanor?
I would just say he was preoccupied. He had a lot of other stuff going on. There wasn't much he could do with us. Very busy.
So when you got there, did you guys talk? Did you make dinner? What occurred?
We ended up not making dinner because the detectives were there for a while. My sister and I sat up on the couches while they were downstairs doing stuff with the detectives. And then at one point we helped out with the dogs because we know they're dogs and they're very scared of people. So we took them out the back and we were playing with them outside for a while, playing fetch. And then we'd come in because one of the dogs got hurt. And so we decided that we'd just bring them in because we don't want them to keep running around if they're already hurt. And then we fed them dinner upstairs. So we returned back upstairs.
Okay, you fed the dogs dinner.
Yeah.
Okay. What happened next?
Detectives left probably like 15, 20 minutes after that. And then my sister and I sat at the table with Chandler.
Hold on 1 second here. Oh, I gave it. I have the exhibit. Did you and Chandler discuss anything of note on on July 7th when you were over at his house?
The thing that stuck out to me most was about the text messages. So, you want me to explain that?
Sure.
Okay. So we were like sitting down. We were just like talking in general, like asking how he was doing. He said he was fine. He's hanging in there. He's just trying to figure out what's going on. And that was my only red flag looking back when he said they asked me for text messages. The detectives did, and you never have to give them your phone. You can just send screenshots because they got everything they need.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. Chandler's parents are missing.
We didn't know that at that point, but yeah.
Okay. Police are there investigating. The police leave. And he gives you advice that you don't have to turn your phone over to police.
Yeah, he said mirroring. The term mirroring.
Instead, he says, don't turn over your phone, take screenshots.
Yeah.
And that was his concern at that moment on July 7th.
It was one of them, but that's the one that like stuck out to me.
Okay. Did you have some communications with Chandler, let me back up. Tell me about leaving the house that evening. When did you guys decide to leave, and was there anything that made you leave?
We left because he said he was going to go eat dinner with Gail and Rick, so that's why we ended up not making dinner ourselves with him. We just left the groceries in the car. We never took them in.
Okay. And you leave with your sister?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have any conversations, text messages, or phone calls with Chandler the following day, Thursday, July 8th?
I think it was the 8th. I do have text messages with him, but I don't remember which day.
Fair enough. I'm going to show you what has been marked as Exhibit 44. Okay. How would you describe Exhibit 44? And you can turn the page if you need to.
Is the whole thing?
Yeah, how would you describe it?
Okay. Normal, but still seeming concerned that his parents are missing and he needs help still.
All right. Is Exhibit 44 text message exchange between you and Chandler?
It is.
And although it has a day or two before, specifically it's Thursday and it says 2:06 p.m. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And does it appear to be a true and accurate copy of the text messages between you two?
It is.
All right, I'd move Exhibit 44 into evidence at this time.
No objection.
It is received.
And I would ask for the Elmo.
It may be published.
And Haley, there should be a screen right in front of you that you should be able to look at.
Okay.
Although this is sometimes. So we're just gonna start the Thursday, and again, that would be July 8th. And is this what you wrote? Hey, how are you doing today? Mm-hmm. Is that a yes?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. And then Chandler writes, I'm doing all right. I found some keys and my brother's heading up to the cabin now, so we will know more soon. And how do you respond?
And I said, okay, sounds good. Let us know. It's kind of clear. Let us know if you need anything, I believe.
If you need help with anything?
Yeah.
All right. And then Chandler responds, thanks, Kat came over to help out around the house. I might ask my neighbor to help with the lawn because the mower shakes my head way too much. And how do you respond?
Again, it's clear, but I said, okay, I can ask my dad too.
And Chandler then responds, "That would be nice of you. But he's a really busy guy." Okay. Do you understand or do you know why Chandler made the comment about his head and mowing the lawn?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I had heard he'd fallen down the stairs in the middle of the night, the second set of stairs, because they were remodeling their home. So the upstairs bathroom one was still torn up. They did the basement one first. So their rooms are upstairs on the split level. So he was headed downstairs to use the one that was finished, to my understanding.
And did you know anything else about his injury?
From what I heard, he was supposed to be in a collar.
Was he in a collar when you saw him on the 7th?
No.
On the 7th, when you saw him, did he complain about his head, his neck, his shoulders, or anything else?
He was walking a little different than normal, so I asked him, and he said that's just part of the injury.
Okay. Anything else? No further questions.
Cross-examination.
No, thank you.
May this witness be excused and released.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you so much. Have
Thank
a
you.
good
Okay.
day.
My name is Hannah Hilgendorf. My first name is spelled Hanna, and my last name is Hilgendorf, Hilgendorf.
How old are you, Hannah?
I am 25 years old.
And what do you do for a living?
I am a nurse.
All right. Did you know two people by the name of Bart and Krista Halderson?
Yes.
How'd you know them?
My mom was best friends with Krista growing up, and then she met Bart, and they've been a huge part of our lives, our entire life.
In fact, you called them aunt and uncle.
Yes.
And how did you learn this summer that Bart and Krista were missing?
Okay. I was living by myself at the time, so I talked to my parents every once in a while, and sorry, I have to breathe. Okay, so wait, how did I know what?
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
How did you learn that Bart and Krista were missing?
Okay. So my sister came over to pick me up, and we were gonna go shopping at Target, and we were hanging out, and then my parents called, and they were talking to Haley, my sister. Haley is my twin sister, our only sister. So I was in the car with her, and she just starts saying talking to my parents, I can't believe she hasn't, answered yet, or another no call, no show to work. And I was like, what are you talking about? Why are mom and dad freaking out that Krista's not hanging out with them? This is they're adults doing their own thing, And then I was and then she stops, she gets off the phone, and she just tells me everything, they've apparently been no calling, no showing to work, and she's not answering her phone, and the only person that my mother had spoken to was Chandler Halderson, and so and my mother, that's the only person that she was getting a hold of at the time, trying to figure out what's going on, and he seemed to have known where they had went.
Okay.
So
based on learning that Bart and Krista were missing, what, if anything, did you decide to do?
Okay, so I decided, we need to be here for Chandler. At this time, I didn't know anything about much, except for they were missing, and Mitchell and Chandler Halderson were we were really close to them growing up. So I said, man, Chaz is home all alone there, without them, this is so sad. And so we run inside, and we had just bought some food to cook, and we were gonna go cook it at their house, because we were let's just go over there now. Instead of cooking it here, we'll just go run there and say hello to him. And when we pull in the drive, I just remember there was the DAs were there, or detectives, I don't know what you guys are. Okay, but you guys were there, and then
The police.
Yes.
But in plain clothes.
Okay, yes, the police. I don't know what they really, okay. So I was like, whoa, this is like crazy, you know, like what is like going on? So we go inside and yeah.
Okay. Hannah, had you been over to the 4595 Oak Spring Circle address in the past?
Yes.
Did the house look the same, different, or something else?
A bit different.
Tell me about that.
Okay, just like each detail.
What you remember, yeah.
Okay, so there were sheets on the couches, and then in the basement, I remember like there was these couches pushed together with a blanket laying over the couch as to like you could like lay in that basically, you know. And Chandler had mentioned he was sleeping downstairs to one of the police that was, when they were downstairs, I heard him saying that. So he had just been sleeping in the basement with two couches, or like, it's almost like a little fort looking thing that he built for himself, basically downstairs. I can't say to be exact because the picture gets less clear in your mind as time goes on.
Sure.
But it was like a fort looking thing.
Okay, and did Chandler say anything to you, or did you overhear him saying anything about the sheets on the couch?
Yes, I heard him talking to the police saying that one of the people that he had, you know, because he went to you guys and explained that his parents were missing, because talking to my parents really were very adamant that he went and reported this. And apparently, like, there was another police earlier that day before Sims and this other detective or police, and he, that had went there, and apparently that other detective didn't like the dog hair on the couches, so he had placed sheets on the couches to protect him from sitting on dog hair.
So some other unknown police officer had asked Chandler to cover the couches?
Yes.
Because of dog hair? Mm-hmm. Is that a yes?
Yes.
All right. Did you observe anything about the fireplace that was unusual?
No, I didn't look at it.
Okay.
I walked past it, but it's like my mind was just like, this is such a weird situation and I want to not be here at all anymore. Like, from the moment I walked in, I didn't want to be there at all, or, you know, so.
What do you mean when you say it was a weird situation?
Well, first off, the police are there, you know, and I didn't know at all, like, anything of this caliber could be possibly ever be going on, that I would ever experience this in my life. And the feeling I received from Chandler was different to me than that of that I normally feel from him. And so it's just weird.
Okay.
You know, I gave him a hug right when I walked in, and it wasn't like, oh my God, good to see you, you know? And I know that his parents were missing and stuff, but it was just he seemed different than he normally does. Not as, he's the more like warmer one usually.
And he was less warm on this occasion?
Yes, I would say less warm.
Did he make any statements about his health or how he was feeling?
Well, yes. I guess I didn't know he had hurt his neck and stuff like that, you know, prior to this. But apparently he had said something about a neck brace. And I know after the fact, you know, talking to my mom about that he had fallen down his stairs. But wait, can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. I asked if Chandler spoke to his health or how he was feeling.
Yes, okay, sorry. I get off the beaten path and then I'm like just telling you.
That's okay. I know you're incredibly nervous.
So, yes. So he had said his head didn't feel right. He was explaining, you know, he hadn't really gotten to eat all day and he hasn't gotten a lot of sleep and his head just really doesn't feel right is what he had kept telling us.
Do you remember telling the detectives that he told you that his head is messed up?
Yeah, like he just didn't feel right. Mm-hmm. Something of that caliber, yes.
Was Chandler wearing a neck brace when you saw him on July 7th?
No.
How did you know about the neck brace?
I had, my mom had told me after the fact, I was like, this is just weird. Like, what in the heck is going on? You know, talking to my parents about this. And she said that he had fallen. I said there was something about that. And then my mom had mentioned what had happened prior.
Okay. Do you, at some point that evening, talk to Chandler about his parents being missing?
Yes. So, you know, we sit down at the table and the detectives leave. I wanted to go with them, but
why?
Just a weird vibe, and this is just not somewhere. I just didn't feel very safe. Like I felt. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like I'm sitting in the middle of what now seems to be a crime scene with somebody who is acting differently than I'm used to. And it just doesn't feel like a good idea.
Okay, and what, if anything, did Chandler say about his parents being missing?
Okay. Well, do you want me to answer the first? It was about the, what he said differently? Or you said... Never mind. Okay, sorry.
I don't know what my previous question was.
It was going to be
why don't we just start fresh? And what, if anything, did Chandler say about his parents being missing?
Okay. He said, you know, in the moment he told me, you know, they're probably just at a casino.
What did you think of that comment?
There's no way. There's just no way that they are like just the sweetest, loving people you will ever meet. And there is no way that, you know, they would have ever put anyone that they love or care about in a situation where they're worried about where they are. You know, she's like, do you need a glass of water? Do you need this? Do you need that? Like very sweet, loving, like caring people. There is nobody sweeter than those two. Like anything that they can do for you, they're gonna do it, and they would never make anybody worried about where they are kind of people, and especially no way to a casino. Like she is a very modest, very kind of shyer person and wouldn't be doing that.
Did Chandler say anything else about his parents being missing besides the casino comment?
Really, he just kind of questioned me, like, should he make a Facebook post?
Tell me about that.
Well, we sat down and me and my sister went up and we were sitting at the main dining table in the upstairs, and he said, like, I don't know what to do now. Like, should I make a Facebook post? Like, right after the police had left. And I was thinking to myself, I wanted to say, duh, you know, like, your parents are missing. It's almost feeling like you have to think about how to act, you know? Like, if your parents are missing, you go online, you tell everybody, you go to the police the day of, especially a no-call, no-show to work. They would have never done that. So, and to ask me, you know, what you should do now, and should you make a Facebook post, like, how should you go about this? It was just interesting. And
did Chandler make any comments to you about giving your phones to police?
Yeah, that's like the first thing we had discussed. So he said that if a cop ever asks you to take your phone, you do not need to give your phone to them, because you can show them everything that they need without letting them mirror your phone. And that was like one of the first things that he had said to me. That's why I was like, I don't know. I was like, are you kidding me? Your parents are missing again. In my head, your parents are missing. You had apparently had contact with your parents, which I had learned later down the road talking to my mother after the fact. It wasn't my thing that I heard of, but it's just another thing adding to the story of like, your parents are missing. Why don't you let them mirror your phone so we can figure out if you had tried to call them, if we could see the location on the phone or anything like that.
No further questions.
Cross-examination?
I have nothing, thank you.
May this witness be released and excused.
Yes.
Ms. Hilgendorf, thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day.
State calls Jane Hilgendorf.
Go right ahead.
Good morning. Could you please tell us your name and spell it out?
Jane Hilgendorf, Hilgendorf.
And just because we have a record, I have to, even though I think I know, you have to spell your first name.
Jane, Jane.
And Jane, who are you married to?
Michael Hilgendorf.
All right. You'll be happy to know he testified and he deferred to you a lot, so we're going to ask you a lot of questions.
Okay.
Okay. Did you know someone named Bart and Krista Halderson?
I did.
Who did you know first?
Krista.
Tell me about how you knew Krista.
Well, we met in middle school. We didn't become really good friends until high school. She became my best friend our freshman year. We sat together every morning before my English class outside Miss Bear's room.
Where were you all going to school?
We both went to East High School.
Here in Madison?
Yep.
Do you remain friends with Krista your whole life?
Yep. 39 years. She's been my best friend.
Could you give us a little bit of history of Krista after high school? What did she do?
So after high school, she went to Eau Claire College. Her dad got sick, and so she came back to Madison and finished her college career at UW-Madison.
Okay. Do you know what she majored in?
Art history.
Okay. Why do you laugh?
Well, because it's not
many jobs in art history.
a job you can go and be like, oh, I'm an art history major.
Right.
Can I?
There's no art history factory.
Correct.
Okay. After graduating with a degree in art history, what did Krista do with her life?
She worked at Boston Store, Home Goods. She got married to Bart.
How did she meet Bart?
They both worked together at Boston Store.
Okay.
She was a manager and he was a clerk.
Was that the one here in Madison?
Yep,
That
at East Town Mall.
Used
Yep.
to exist. About when, and I don't expect an exact date, but about when did they get married?
When did they get married?
Yeah, what year, if you know, or approximately?
1994. July 31st.
July 31st,
Yeah.
1994? Where did the Haldersons start their family? What town were they living in when they started?
DeForest.
Okay. And how long did they live in DeForest, approximately?
Probably 6-ish years, maybe,
Okay.
when
And-
they bought the house, because they had lived in an apartment up until that point, and then they bought a house. And then on Mohawk, 505 Mohawk. And then the boys went to school, like kindergarten and first grade there. And then they moved to Plymouth.
And is Plymouth where they resided for quite a while?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. How far away was Plymouth from you?
About 2 hours and 15 minutes from house to house.
that was the farthest you'd ever probably lived away from Krista?
Yes.
And did you maintain your friendship during that time?
Yes.
The boys were born and they went to school in Plymouth?
They were born in DeForest, started school in DeForest, and then went to Plymouth to school.
And did they go all the way through school in Plymouth, or did they move before they graduated?
Nope. Bart had received another job when Chandler was a senior, and Krista's like, we're not moving him until he's done with high school so that he can finish out at one school.
So the boys were able to graduate from Plymouth?
Correct.
And Bart's new job drew him closer to you again?
Yes.
And you were happy with that?
I was excited about that, yes.
And they went back to the same general area of Dane County?
Windsor, but yeah.
And that's the house on Oak Spring Circle?
Correct.
Okay. So they moved there just after Chandler would have gotten done with high school?
Correct.
Okay. Maybe 5 years ago?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Throughout all of these years, your families stayed connected, were friends?
Yes.
Tell me what types of things you do together.
So once, I believe it was winter break, Krista and I and the two boys and my two girls, my twins, we went to like Blue Harbor and stayed in a hotel at a water park. We would do dinners together, usually at Pedro's in Madison. They would come down and that was our spot, and we would all go out to dinner. Krista and I would visit each other, periodically. She would drive to Madison or I would go up there. Like on the girls' last day of, I don't even know what grade they were in, after they were done, because they only go for a short period of time in the morning, we drove to Krista and we went to Sheboygan to the beach.
Oh, okay.
And just hung out for the afternoon.
That state park that's over there?
Yep.
Andre Kohler, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe that is correct.
I've been to all the state parks, that's what.
Okay.
All 48.
I don't remember it. She just drove, I just rode.
Okay. Hard question, and feel free to tell me if you can't answer it, but you were around these folks a lot with their kids. What kind of parents were Bart and Krista?
Amazing.
What do you mean by that?
They never really got angry. Like, I'll throw myself under the bus because when I get mad at my girls, I used to yell. They weren't yellers. They didn't do any of that stuff. I mean, I don't think they had probably ever even spanked their kids. Okay. They always gave them options and choices.
Okay. Now, Mitchell and Chandler, very close in age, 18 months or so apart.
Correct, yeah.
Mitchell wasn't living in the house on Oak Springs, correct?
No.
But Chandler was?
Right. When they first moved there, he lived there for a very short period of time.
And
Mitchell did.
Mitchell did. And was Chandler always living there, or had he moved out at times and come back?
He had moved out and when he went to school in Platteville. And then, they move out, live in a dorm, then come back for the summers. And then I think he lived on, I believe it's Main Street, by like the Echo Bar. I don't know what the street is.
Sure. He lived down here somewhere.
Yep.
With some roommates?
Yep.
Okay. But then eventually moved back
Exactly.
with
Yep.
mom and dad? Okay.
Yep. After a year, or about a year, yeah.
In early July of last year, 2021, at some point you hear that Krista didn't go to work one day where she was supposed to be there, right?
I got a call from my husband, yes.
And your husband works with Krista?
Correct. At Zimbrick, yes.
What, if anything, do you do with that information when you hear that Krista no-call, no-showed on a Friday to work?
I went, that's not my best friend. She would never do that. So I immediately called her cell. It went right to her voicemail. I called Bart. It went right to his voicemail, and I'm like, what the heck? So I didn't remember that I had Chandler.
That's fine.
We call him Chaz.
That's fine.
I didn't remember I had his number, so I called Mitchell right away. And I asked Mitch, I said, where's your mom? And he's like, what do you mean? She's at work. And I said, she didn't go to work and she didn't call in. He's like, I don't know. So then I called Chandler. After he was my fourth call. In the meantime, I had texted Krista a few times, asking her where she was.
Cabin. Had you been there personally?
No, we were always going to go. We had made plans. Said, I don't know. And I said, your mom is a very detailed person. She would never not go somewhere and tell you where she's going or who she's with. That's not Krista. She would leave you a mountain of notes.
Did Chandler provide any other information on this call about the cabin or where his parents were? Anything that you remember?
He said that they went with another couple, and I asked who, and he couldn't tell me. Which I thought was strange, because, I mean, half the time her and I would say, you know, I'm going to the cottage this weekend, whatever. I never got a phone call like that. So that was kind of out of the ordinary for me. And for me to not be able to get a hold of her, I mean, if she didn't answer my calls right away, she would always call me back.
Sure.
Because she was like my sister, so.
Did Chandler seem to have any more details other than they were with another couple and they went to the cabin?
He said that they loaded up a bunch of booze and took a whole bunch of money.
Okay.
And maybe that they went gambling and they were going to have a really good time.
I'm going to pause there for 1 second.
Okay.
Were Bart and Krista people who loaded up a bunch of booze into their car usually?
No.
You answered somewhat emphatically. What do you mean by that?
So we had been to their house many occasions. My husband and Bart would have like a beer. That's all Bart would ever drink is a beer, or he likes scotch. That was, you know, or a little small glass of scotch, whatever. Just as we were winding down, Krista usually didn't drink. She would have maybe a beer. So I can preface this. I had asked on one of my occasions when I went up to her house, I'm like, do you want me to pick up a bottle of wine for us tonight? And she's like, no, I don't want to drink in front of the kids. And I was like, you're an adult, you can.
Right. You don't share that concern yourself.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I can have a glass of wine. I'm an adult.
You are. And the money, did that make any sense to you that Bart and Krista would load up cash, a bunch of cash, and go up to the cabin?
No. Bart's a CPA. He was very tight with his money. They both were. They kind of had a budget, and they didn't spend outside that budget.
Okay.
Hence, their house was in disarray a little bit.
Sure. They were remodeling.
They were remodeling it to what Krista wanted, yes.
Doing some work themselves.
You bet.
Maybe not up to code.
Demo day.
Okay.
He had a shirt that said demo day.
Yeah. After this initial call with Chandler, this is on Friday, the day of the no-call, no-show.
Correct.
What'd you do? What'd you do with that information?
I tried calling her. We were planning to go up to our cottage. So I had called her a few times. I didn't get a hold of her. We all went up to our cottage as planned. So it was myself, my husband, one of my twins, and her boyfriend.
Okay. Your cottage in relation to theirs, I think your husband said 88 miles away. Sound about right to you?
Yep, about an hour. Yep.
But despite being an hour away, and both of you having cottages up north, you never made the trek. You'd always thought maybe we'll do it Sunday, but you'd never done it.
Right.
Okay. So while you're up at the cottage, are you worried about what's going on?
A little bit. And then I got a text from Chaz saying that his mom and dad were fine. They made it up to the cottage and they were going to the parade.
Okay.
In Langlade.
Sure.
Or, well, sorry, White Lake, I believe was his comment to me. And I was like, oh, okay. He said he had gotten a text from her. So I was like, that made me feel a little better. Like, okay, no big deal.
Okay. At what point do you begin to grow concerned again?
He called me on Wednesday and said, Mom and Dad haven't come home. And I was like, what? He's like, and I haven't heard from them. And I'm like, did you call them? And he's like, yeah, I've tried. I'm like, okay. At that point, he asked me what he should do. And I said, call the police, have them go over, do a well check on the cottage. And he's like, okay. I called him back a little later and I said, did you call? And he's like, no, I can't find the number for up there. My husband, knowing me, he's like, all right, we're gonna get in the car. We're just gonna drive over there. I asked him for the address. He texted it to me so that I could get there.
Sure. And when you say in the call with Chandler that he didn't know the number up there, he didn't know the number to the police?
To the police station, yeah. Or who to call up there. I mean,
Sure.
I don't know. I just thought you could call any police station and they could kind of give you a number or connect you somehow.
Sure.
I guess in my pea brain, that's what I thought.
Okay. We could Google it, something like that.
Yeah, or yeah. I mean, there's got to be numbers out there somewhere.
So you decide to take matters into your own hands. You and your husband are going to take a drive.
That's right.
So
We did.
Off you go, 88 miles, and you get to
One
the
way,
cottage.
yep.
What do you find?
There is two like big old like spoked wheels. Like people use them in their outdoor motif all the time. And then there's a birch log across that. And I'm like, I take a picture and I'm like, is this the cottage? And he's like, yeah. And then he's like, haven't you ever been there? And I'm like, no. At this point, I called him on my cell. And I said, Chandler, no one's been here. The grass is like 2 feet tall, well, 16 inches, 2 feet tall. And when you drive over grass, like when we haven't been up to the cottage, it gets pushed over. So you know that somebody's been there. It wasn't pushed over.
Okay.
It was pretty tall.
So you call Chandler.
I called him back.
Get
and
back
I
in
said,
your car, I would imagine, and you're talking to him?
my husband didn't let me go out of the car. He said, you stay in. I'm going to go look.
Okay.
So I called Chandler back, so I have him on the phone, and I'm like, nobody's been here. And he's like, are the doors unlocked? And I said, no, they're locked from the outside, which I thought was weird because ours has a normal like key lock.
Right.
And he's like, no, that's how it is. I'm like, okay. And he's like, did you check everywhere behind like the boathouse? And I'm like, Uncle Mike's doing that right now. He's like, okay. He's like, did you find anything? And I said, like, what? And I was shocked that he said, any bullet shells or any blood or anything. And I went, what? And he's like, did you find anything? And I'm like, no, no one's been here. And he's like, okay, what do you think I should do? I'm like, you need to report them as missing. obviously they didn't make it here. I don't know how they could go to a parade if they didn't make it here, but whatever. Maybe they stayed somewhere else. I didn't know.
Right. At that point, you head back to your cottage for a little bit?
Yes. And then I got a call from a Detective Nelson, I believe.
You started talking to the police at that point?
Yep. I got a phone call. So yeah, he asked some questions and I told him what I knew. And he called, is that Wednesday? Yeah. And then he called back to like the next, so on Wednesday, after I got that phone call, I looked at my husband and he's like, we'll just pack up and go home tomorrow. He looked at me and he goes, you're not gonna be happy, let's just go. So we packed up our cottage, shut it down, and drove back to Madison on Wednesday.
Sure. When you got back to Madison, I think we heard from your daughters, they took some time and they had went over to the Halderson house at some point.
Right, because I had told them, I said, well, you know, and Krista and Uncle Bart are missing. And Haley's like, we'll just go be with Chaz so he's not alone. I said, okay. Because that's what she would do for me.
Did you yourself go over there?
I did not, because we didn't get back until late.
Okay.
And just, the girls had already come back. And I'm like, okay. So, and I knew he had been invited, according to the twins, to Dan and Mary's, which are some friends that live up the street from them, for dinner on Wednesday. That's what he told the twins. Oops, sorry.
Okay. After that call with Chandler in the car about the search of the cabin and no one being there, did you talk to him again after that?
I did.
When?
We stopped at McDonald's in Eagle River. No. Yeah, Eagle River. And I called him back and I said, have you heard anything? And he's like, no. He's like, but I went to the police station and filed a report that they hadn't come home. And I said, okay, good. So they'll be looking for them. But I forgot to mention one. I was on the phone with him when I was sitting at the cottage. I said, I have looked for Bart's car everywhere. And he's like, oh, Aunt Jane, didn't I tell you that they didn't take their car? I said, what do you mean they didn't take their car? He's like, they rode with the other couple. I said, who? And he's like, I don't know. I said, do you know what kind of car they drove? Because I'm thinking, you know, maybe we can look for that car. And he didn't know. So I was like, okay.
So you head back to Madison because there's no car to look for, there's no people to look for, and they're not at the cabin.
Nope.
Okay. After you get back to Madison, do you have any contact with Chandler yourself?
No, I didn't. No. No, I did not.
Okay. You never went to the house yourself?
After, like, Mitchell invited me over to the house, like.
Since?
Yes.
Okay.
After everything occurred, yes.
I'm going to take 1 second, okay? So if you want to take a drink of water, now would be a good time. The judge will probably even pour it for you if you ask.
Do you want some water?
It's a good idea for all of us, right? Thank you very much.
No further questions.
Any cross-examination?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
May this witness be released and excused.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Have a good remainder of your day. You can leave the water up there if you want, or take it with you. Right, you.
Okay.